Hi, my name is Emi.
My name is Amy. We'll get to who we are in a moment. We want to start with a quick exercise.
How many triangles do you see here? Go ahead, shout out a number. You're part of this talk too. Okay, 6, 7, 8, 11? Okay, 9, wow. All right, there are 0 triangles. Your brain played a trick on you. It's a trick it plays all the time. And all of our brains play this trick, so what's happening here?
First, there's an image. It's called the Kinesia Triangle, and it helps to illustrate unconscious bias. Unconscious bias refers to the stereotypes and attitudes that affect our understanding, behaviors, and decisions in ways we're not aware of.
And something else happened. I led you to think there were triangles. I primed you. Your brain then took that priming and started drawing in lines so you'd be more likely to see one or more triangles. See, your brain took a shortcut. Rather than see what's actually there, it took what the image implied and what I told you to draw a quick conclusion.
Why do our brains take these shortcuts? Our brains receive about 11 million bits of information per moment, but can only process upwards of 40 of that. That's 40 out of 11 million. What about those other 10,999,960 or so bits? Well, they're still influencing us, but they're doing so in ways we're not aware of because a conscious mind can't possibly process all of those bits at once. Therefore, our brains automate decisions so that we don't get overwhelmed.
Okay, let's pause and review. Our brains take in more information than we can consciously process, and they make shortcuts to get us through the day. And those can sometimes be helpful, but they can also lead us down the wrong path. And when they go down the wrong path, that can lead to problems. And those problems, they go well beyond triangles and geometry.
For example, when we pay women less than men for the same work, that's in part because of unconscious bias. When white physicians ask fewer questions to their patients of color, that too is a form of unconscious bias. What's influencing these unconscious biases? Everything from being exposed to media, to observing others' behaviors, even to overhearing others' conversations. These experiences stack on top of one another and prime us to think and act in certain ways.
And here's why all of this matters. As you saw with the triangles, we're not aware that our brains are taking these shortcuts and we're drawing these quick conclusions. But as you heard in those examples, we all suffer the consequences. We may all suffer in different ways, but we all suffer.
We want to change that. You know those 10 million or so bits that are influencing our decisions in ways we're not aware of? We want to make more of those bits primed for inclusion. That means, thank you. That means challenging stereotypes and overriding old narratives that have been implanted into our unconscious minds. Before we tell you how to do that, we think it's important to tell you why we care about this so much.
Yeah, well, for me, it started early on, when I realized that images in the media didn't include people who look like I do. So, as a teenager, I resolved to make media that included a more diverse set of talent. But when I became an editor at a major news organization, I often found myself making the more marketable or profitable editorial choice, upholding the status quo more often than not. Rather than disrupt the pipeline of content, I often found myself succumbing to the magnetic pull of feeding it. So, stepping away from that work and spending 3 years at the Stanford D School learning and teaching human-centered design, I realized how far I'd veered from my professional vision. So, in this work, I wanted to help others in my profession to act on their unconscious bias awareness in new and creative ways.
You see how lucky I am to get to work with her. I grew up in a suburb outside of Cleveland, Ohio, called Shaker Heights, that pioneered racial integration. In high school, it was cool to be in the Dialogue on Race Relations Club, where every week, high school students met in each other's living rooms and learned how to navigate and facilitate conversations around identity that we then went and taught to elementary school students. At every stage of life, I realized that experience was not the norm. From colleges to workplaces to communities, not everyone is sitting around in dialogue groups, much to my dismay. But people are in groups. And with a few interventions, we can make those groups spaces where more people feel like they can thrive, where they can contribute and grow regardless of and because of their identities. Which brings us to what I believe is one of the most important questions we face. How might we use technology, entertainment, and design to create spaces where everyone belongs? How do we make inclusion the norm?
It starts with that triangle that's not a triangle, and the tricks our minds play, and these experiences that prime us every day. As human beings, we all have unconscious bias. We're all drawing lines that aren't there, and we're experiencing this every day.
Let me share an example that's close to home. A few years ago, I was healing from an ankle injury. My physical therapist was applying medical tape, and I noticed it was created to camouflage into my skin tone, much like these microphones. So I asked the physical therapist, what other colors does this come in? And he responded, oh, all the colors, red, blue, pink, orange. And I said, what about for people of color? Is there not a market for people of color who want bandages to blend into their skin tone?
That sounds awesome. All right, here's another example. This one comes from my professional world. 10% of videos uploaded to an open platform are upside down. Why? Because 10% of people are left-handed, and the people who designed the platform had right-handed bias.
Here's another example, airbags. They were designed to save lives and prevent injuries, right? When they first came out, researchers noticed there were significantly higher deaths and injuries for women and children. Why? They had tested the airbags with tall male crash test dummies. Now, were the people behind these products out to risk the lives of women and children, make bad experiences for left-handed people, or infuse racism through medical tape? No, of course not. But these products and features still made it to market. How did that happen? In part, because the designers weren't aware which of their mental shortcuts were influencing their decisions. So, how do we make these mental shortcuts work for us to create better products?
Okay, that is a critical question, and I want you to keep it in mind as we switch gears. Now, how many of you think of yourself as creative? Go ahead and raise your hand. I can actually see you. This is lovely. Great. Okay, you can put your hands down. I would like you to turn to the person next to you and say, hi, partner. Yeah. Awesome, awesome, okay. Thank you. Now, there are blank pages in the back of your program. You want to fetch those now. All right. Now, you also received the homework assignment of bringing a writing utensil. You're going to want to get that too. Awesome. All right. So it looks like folks are relatively settled. Now, why would I ask you to engage in all of this while we're up here giving a TED Talk? Well, it's because I want you to draw your partner. I know it's dark. Do the best you can. There's a catch. You have 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. I'm being generous. 1. Okay, pencils, pens, styluses, crayons, markers down. Okay. Now show your partner what you drew. That's great. Okay, all right. Okay, all right. If you can hear me, clap once. Beautiful. It's fun, right? Okay, so if you didn't raise your hand before this exercise, i.e. you did not think of yourself as creative, the fact that you drew something suggests otherwise. Creativity is not the sole vestige of museum paintings and formal design. It's an attribute we all possess. We may all manifest our creativity differently, as you saw, but we all have the capacity to create something new. When we're young, we're put in a box. We're either told we're good with numbers, or we're better with words, we're mathematicians, or we're artists. The implication is that we're either labeled creative, or we're not. But the truth is that that paradigm is a myth. We are all creative.
Now that we know that creativity is not a mysteriously bestowed talent, what is it? Creativity is a process. There are steps we each take to create something new. That leads us to design thinking.
Okay, so what is design thinking? Well, design thinking, as I define it, is one way to describe the creative process. We often refer to it as human-centered design, and that's because when we apply design thinking, we place a human at the center of our work. So another way to describe it is design thinking is the difference between me saying, hey, Amy, we need a new political system, am I right? Okay. And here's the difference. I met Rashid, a father of two, who's concerned that the current presidential election is pushing his children away from civic participation. Rashid needs a way to teach his children about civic responsibility because he fears that the information that they are receiving passively is misinforming and frustrating them. How might we help Rashid to teach and inspire his children? That's the difference.
When you practice design thinking, you focus not on predetermined solutions, a new political system, but on human needs, a father's need to teach and inspire his children. You seek out stories and empathize with the people for and with whom you are trying to solve problems. Ultimately, design thinking gives us a new language about which to communicate this creative process, the steps we take to make something new.
And here's why design thinking matters when it comes to unconscious bias. First, design thinking gives us a way to share and test assumptions because it pushes us to interact with people differently and more regularly than we normally do. Second, design thinking is often taught using high energy and engaging methods. Remember the fun you just had when you drew your partner? Yeah, we wanted to take that same energy and bring it to an unconscious bias awareness experience.
Ultimately, the big idea is this. If people can become simultaneously aware of their creativity and of their biases, they'll be more able to inject inclusion and equity into the products and services they're creating, and most importantly, into their daily lives.
And that means we want people, we want you, to walk away with three truths. We all have unconscious bias. We are all creative. And we can use the creative process to disrupt our unconscious biases.
We call our work together and this talk Design for Worldview. Design for Worldview is more than a name. It's an invitation to design for worldview. When we talk about worldview, we're referencing all the experiences that shape our perspectives and, in the end, our biases. We're talking about the lenses through which we see the world. I'll use myself as an example. I see the world through the lens of a sister.
I'm a sister too.
I see the world through the lens of an inclusion strategist and expert.
And I see the world through the lens of a media professional and journalist.
We both see the world through the lenses of being entrepreneurs as well. Now, of course, we have our lenses relevant to race, religion, gender, and so do you. We all have these lenses. Our job as creative human beings is to design for them.
That means using the creative process to disrupt the tricks our minds play. Okay, how? Well, here are some practical actions you can try.
First, identify your lenses. You can do this today during a break. Come find one of us. We'd love to be your partner.
Absolutely.
You can do this at work with a teammate or at home with family and friends. Take a moment, grab a partner, and list out all the different ways through which you see the world. Try to identify as many lenses as you can. Then compare notes. See where there may be gaps or overlaps. Ask each other how the lenses you wrote down and the lenses you didn't think to write down might be influencing what you're creating.
Now, second, be uncomfortable. Working on diverse teams is not supposed to be comfortable, and frankly, neither is the creative process. Innovation requires that we navigate ambiguous interactions and circumstances, and that we commit to them, because we know the cost if we don't, and the potential if we do.
Third, prime your bits. By now you know we're talking about those 10,999,960 or so bits, the ones that are influencing our decisions but in ways we're not aware of that they're doing. So prime your bits. If Emi primes your bits for triangles, how might you prime your bits for inclusion? This includes challenging the stereotypes and the overly simplified media messages that have been seeping into our psyches. How do we do that?
Start with your phones, okay? We look at our phones on average about 150 times a day. So one way to prime your bits is to find an image that counters a stereotype that you hold and make that the background of your cell phone. It could be a photograph of a female corporate board member or a senior citizen startup founder. It doesn't matter. Make that image the background of your phone for 2 weeks. Give your brain time to absorb it. You may find that over time, it will begin to influence your actions, leading you to make more inclusive choices.
If you remember anything, remember this. We are all biased.
And we are all creative.
Unconscious bias awareness is not about accusations and blame. It's about using the creative problem-solving process to counteract our biases.
That means, when it comes to making a more equitable world, each of us is the source of the problem and the solution.
Thank you.